What if the global financial system isn't broken at all? What if the debt, the crises, and the concentration of power are exactly how it was designed to work? And what if most people are looking for solutions in places where real change is impossible? In a recent What Bitcoin Did conversation, Simon Dixon laid out a framework that challenges how money, banking, and power actually function behind the scenes. Not as a theory, not as speculation, but as a system with clear incentives and predictable outcomes. Once you hear it explained this way, it becomes hard to look at Bitcoin or the financial system the same way again. So the real question is, if this is how the system truly works, what does that mean for you? Simon Dixon recently joined the What Bitcoin Did podcast for a wide-ranging conversation about money, banking, global power, and Bitcoin's role in a rapidly changing financial system. The episode ran for nearly 2 hours and covered everything from the origins of fractional reserve banking and the failure of monetary reform, to Wall Street's growing influence over Bitcoin, the rise of asset managers like BlackRock, and why self-custody may become one of the most important economic decisions of the coming decade. This video condenses that entire discussion into a clear, structured summary of the most important ideas Simon presented, designed for viewers who want the insights without listening to the full episode. If you find this kind of breakdown useful, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Simon Dixon kicks things off with a bombshell that will make you question everything you know about money. Real capitalism, he says, does not exist in our world today. Instead, what we have is a counterfeit version, a debt-based Ponzi scheme where banks conjure money out of thin air with every loan they issue. But here is the sinister twist. The interest on that loan does not even exist in the system to begin with. To repay it, you have no choice but to take out more loans, piling on more debt in a never-ending spiral. This vicious cycle is engineered to bankrupt individuals, corporations, and even entire governments, and Simon insists it is absolutely guaranteed to happen. He traces the roots back to 1694, when the Bank of England extended a £1.2 million loan to King Charles, complete with interest that set off a chain of endless wars and empire-building schemes. Fast forward to 1913, and you see the same model replicated with the creation of the Federal Reserve, sealing America's fate in this grand deception. So, ask yourself, is the money in your pocket truly yours, or is it just fuel for this relentless machine? Now, who exactly is Simon Dixon, and why should you listen to him? He started his career deep in the heart of the system, working as an investment banker where he handled market making on the London Stock Exchange, guided companies through going public, and brokered stocks while witnessing manipulation up close. But in 2006, everything changed when he walked away from it all to join the monetary reform movement. He traveled the world, delivering talks on how fiat currencies are fundamentally backed by war and violence, often getting kicked out of universities for revealing uncomfortable truths about how banks create money through loans. Back then, his ideas sounded like wild conspiracies, but then the 2008 financial crash unfolded, and suddenly his warnings exploded in popularity. He even attempted to influence reforms within the UK government, only to discover that governments themselves are puppets owned by the very banks they should regulate. Undeterred, Simon dreamed up a radical alternative called Bank to the Future, a full reserve bank where people could truly own their money without the tricks of fractional lending. He applied for a banking license, but it was swiftly denied. Why the rejection? Because full reserves pose a mortal threat to the Ponzi scheme, potentially triggering massive outflows from the fragile fractional reserve banks and collapsing the entire system. It makes you wonder, why do stablecoins face the exact same regulatory roadblocks today? Deep in debt and teetering on the edge of personal bankruptcy, Simon received a fateful message in 2010 from a contact known as Johnny Bitcoin, a bold soul who had sold his house and poured everything into this emerging technology. Intrigued, Simon dove in, meeting early developers like Amir Taki and attending the very first Bitcoin conference in Prague, where the price dramatically crashed from $30 down to just $3 right before his eyes. Yet, in that moment of chaos, Simon experienced a profound awakening. He realized Bitcoin solved the core problems plaguing the system. It offered truly ownable money that did not require banks, allowed seamless spending, and featured an unalterable monetary policy that no one could tamper with. Desperate after his failed bank venture, he pivoted hard, investing his last remaining credit and channeling funds into startups like Coinbase, Kraken, and Bitfinex through equity crowdfunding. Many of those early bets blossomed into multi-billion-dollar unicorns. Bitcoin has endured relentless attacks and reached heights that seemed impossible, but Simon warns that the real threats might just be beginning. Is Bitcoin truly secure now, or is a larger danger lurking in the shadows? Simon expresses genuine amazement that Bitcoin has survived this long, calling it nothing short of a miracle amid constant assaults. But the attacks never cease, and the newest one comes from centralization orchestrated by what he terms the financial industrial complex. This includes venture capital, private equity, bank loans, securitization, and even tokenization, all tools used to co-opt and control emerging threats. Now, with the rise of Bitcoin ETFs, discussions around Trump's proposed strategic reserve, and banks stepping in to handle custody, Wall Street is positioning itself to maintain its iron grip on power. Is it already too late to stop this infiltration? Simon believes it is. He argues that Bitcoin will not simply wipe out all fiat currencies, as that naive view ignores the intricate power dynamics at play. Governments are not the root problem. They are merely puppets, manipulated by corporations through aggressive lobbying. And the dollar itself? It is no longer just backed by military might. Simon describes it as a proof-of-weapons network enforced by global institutions like the IMF, World Bank, and BIS. This network was forged through wars, gold thefts, and mercantilism, from the British Empire plundering India's gold to the US seizing 75% of the world's gold reserves after World War II. Shocking revelations like these make you pause. How deep does this web really go? As Simon explains, power structures are constantly evolving. The military has become subordinate to the financial complex, and now the technical industrial complex is stepping up to challenge them both. At the helm are asset managers like BlackRock, overseeing a staggering $12 trillion, wielding tools like their AI system Aladdin that divided up assets during the 2008 crisis. They exert control through board seats, index funds, and pensions, even influencing figures like Elon Musk, whose ventures are largely funded by Pentagon budgets and enable widespread surveillance through Tesla vehicles and the X platform. Blackmail ensures loyalty, with operations like Jeffrey Epstein's serving as fronts for CIA, Mossad, and MI6 to compromise the elite. No one rises to power without strings attached. Power itself shifts with wealth, flowing to sovereign funds in places like the Gulf, China, and India. BRICS, a concept first popularized by Goldman Sachs, was an attempt to co-opt the global south with a single currency, but it failed spectacularly. Instead, multipolarity is rising, with China leading through its Belt and Road Initiative, reversing decades of IMF-induced destruction by funding infrastructure across Africa and Asia. The West, meanwhile, is being deliberately sacrificed through immigration chaos and a managed weakening of the dollar. BlackRock is pivoting alliances to Saudi Arabia and China, capitalizing on these shifts. Proxy wars like the one in Ukraine? They are nothing more than vehicles for US weapon sales, with events like the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage aimed at crippling Europe's manufacturing base. Politicians distract us with endless left versus right battles, but who truly benefits from this orchestrated division? Simon drops a controversial theory that will make you rethink Bitcoin's roots. He believes it was created by intelligence agencies like the NSA as a breakaway project, open sourced by pioneers such as Len Sassaman and Hal Finney. It started as an experiment, free of backdoors and resilient through its decentralized structure of nodes, miners, and developers. Yet co-optation is accelerating. Mining is increasingly centralized, with 40% in the US and 21% in China. Public mining companies like MicroStrategy, holding 650,000 Bitcoin in their treasury, are ensnared by debt traps that subordinate them to the system. ETFs emerged from Operation Choke Point 2.0, while bankruptcies like Celsius and FTX reveal ties to Israeli and CIA operations. Self-custody faces direct threats, as seen in the jailing of Samurai wallet developers. The so-called strategic reserve? It is essentially confiscation, exemplified by the seizure of 117,000 Bitcoin from the Bitfinex hack. Will holding your own keys soon become illegal? Simon notes that elites crave self-custody for themselves, much like they preserve tax havens, while pushing the masses towards centralized custody. This outlook paints a bleak picture for the West, where the consequences of forever wars are finally coming home, assets are being stripped away, and civil unrest looms on the horizon. But Simon offers a glimmer of hope amid the darkness. Bitcoin represents an exit strategy, a powerful boycott against the entrenched system. To boycott the Federal Reserve, start buying Bitcoin and commit to self-custody. To sidestep BlackRock's influence, avoid their ETFs altogether. To undermine the banks, refuse to borrow against your Bitcoin or place it in custody for fiat gains. Instead, invest in your local community, support farmers, choose fresh food, and build resilient supply chains that foster independence. The key is commitment. Dedicate at least 4 years to buying Bitcoin monthly, a strategy Simon has preached since it was just $3 in 2011. Those who followed it have outperformed giants like JP Morgan, Larry Fink, and Peter Thiel, even surpassing the S&P 500. Boycotts have proven power, as seen when Malaysians drove down Starbucks' share price by 10%, forcing out the CEO and halting funding for controversial causes. Remember, you vote with your money, not at the ballot box. Politics is a distraction, but your wallet wields real influence. As the conversation comes to an end, Simon Dixon's message becomes less theoretical and far more personal. Bitcoin, in his view, is no longer an obscure experiment running on the edges of the financial system. It has survived coordinated attacks, public failures, regulatory pressure, and relentless attempts at co-option. But survival is only the first stage. As Bitcoin grows, it inevitably attracts the same forces that dominate every other valuable asset: leverage, custody, financialization, and political influence. The real risk now is not that Bitcoin disappears. It is that it becomes familiar, convenient, and safe enough for institutions to absorb, while quietly stripping away the properties that made it an exit in the first place. Simon is clear that this outcome is not inevitable, but it is the default path unless individuals actively choose otherwise. Self-custody, rejecting leverage, and resisting financial products designed for ease are no longer ideological stances. They are defensive moves. Bitcoin growing up does not mean becoming respectable. It means becoming resilient. The future of Bitcoin will not be decided by politicians, asset managers, or ETF issuers alone. It will be shaped by millions of quiet decisions made over years, not headlines. Decisions about custody, convenience, patience, and conviction. Bitcoin is not a one-time revolution. It is a long game. And now, as Simon makes clear, the next move is yours.